Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn at pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
The breathless Lynn Cullen, I'm sorry. I hope you're still there. Just trying to catch my breath. That's a first. Dang it. I should have known. Sort of crowded downtown where we sit, given the March Madness and big ceramic conference at the convention center. I, who am really good at finding parking places, I mean, there was none to be had. And I have just been in the seventh circle of hell, truly. That's the Oliver parking garage, where you're going round and round and round and round, and they give you a ticket, which leads you to believe there's spaces in there. Well, never mind. You've been there, done that. I am sorry. Boy. So, as usual, a lot of news. The Donald Trump, the gift that keeps on giving. Where to start? Good news. Let's start with some good news, okay? Because I'm trying mightily and so far doing pretty well, hanging on to my more Zen-like outlook that I discovered on my February hiatus. So the good news I saw today was the fact that the FDA is actually just beginning, and I mean just beginning, they've just publicly come out to say today that they are going to look into doing something that has never been done anywhere in the world, and that is to mandate that cigarette manufacturers remove almost all of the nicotine from cigarettes. Now, you understand, doing that, I'm not certain what that does to the taste of a cigarette, but the nicotine, which is a naturally occurring substance in tobacco, in the plant, that can apparently be removed, extracted, that nicotine is the addictive substance in tobacco. And so, they figure, removing that addictive substance will mean that fewer people, obviously, will become addicted to cigarettes. And that stopping smoking will be a whole heck of a lot easier, that there will be no physical withdrawal symptoms. They figure over decades that literally millions upon millions of lives will be saved. I saw one estimate that if you're a regular smoker, your odds of dying because of smoking are essentially 50%. You're looking at a former 3-pack-a-day smoker. It's also been shown that even if you stop, I stopped decades ago, but it can still come back to get you. I find this would be government truly doing its best to safeguard the public health. So let's hope they do it. When I say this is just beginning, what has happened is the Food and Drug Administration has put out what is called, quote, an advance notice of proposed rulemaking. So looking at all those qualifiers, this is not just a notice, it's an advance notice, and it's not a notice of rulemaking, but of proposed rulemaking. This is years and years down the line, but there is hope that if you extract the old nicotine, that you could push the smoking rate down to less than 2% of the adult population. I mean, that would be huge because currently it stands at 15%. And I'm surprised it's that low because we have, as a country, done a pretty damn good job of getting people off cigarettes. This would be the next big step. And understand that nicotine, while it is the addictive aspect of smoking, it is not what causes lung cancer or heart disease or any of that. But that's just taking in the burning tobacco, the tar, all of that. So this would not make cigarettes less lethal in that respect. It makes them less addictive, which means that many fewer people would be hooked, and those that are desperate to stop would find stopping much, much less onerous. So I found when I stopped that I didn't feel that I was all that physically addicted. I must have been. My stuff, because my head is so much more, so much in many ways defines me more than my body, that my head, I felt it was more of a habitual, emotional, psychological thing rather than, like, well, I can't possibly write this story if I don't have a cigarette in my mouth. I can't possibly do this, talk to somebody if I don't have a cigarette in my mouth. I can't possibly, and there are all these things that I thought that proved to be untrue. Okay, that was the good news. Now let's get to the rest of it. Because mostly, oh my God, of all the stories that hit since last we spoke, the one that really freaked me out the most, although I can't say it surprised me, it's just that I've always known it's possible that in fact this is where warfare will be waged, and that has to do with hacking into computers of enemy states' infrastructure, literally stopping a country dead in its tracks rather than dropping bombs on them. And I guess the thing that freaked me out most was this acknowledgement of something that our government has known, but somehow decided not to tell us, that Russian hackers were not only messing with our democracy and our election, but they were also absolutely into our computerized control of utilities, of nuclear power plants. Hello? And let me tell you something. What the government is telling us is they got in and they were fully capable of not only of doing anything they wanted. They were in. They could have shut down the plants. They were sitting on the ability to do that. And that means that they can do it. I hazard a guess that we are capable of doing the same to them. I mean, it's not like we're, just sitting here with people acting on us. I'm sure we are engaged in this kind of cyber warfare as well. But it means they have the ability to get into, the most critical control systems of our infrastructure. As lousy as our infrastructure is, and they tell us to safeguard our friggin' computers. Well, God almighty, here's what I want to know. If the government, if the people at the very top with the ability to bring in the best minds of all can't safeguard their computers, how the hell are we supposed to? It's why I'm sort of like, with all of these breaches. Yeah, so I don't know, but Russian hackers had the foothold they needed to manipulate or shut down American power plants. Computers, technology, it's a wondrous thing. But if you had a propensity toward paranoia, man, this is not the time to be alive. This is, you get on an airplane, and the fact is somebody could be, can hack the controls of air traffic control or even the planes themselves. When we all get in our self-driving cars very soon, those can be hacked. Our signals on the roadways can be hacked. Power plants, water facilities, electricity, all of our banks, the banking system, go like that. So that was the most, of all the things, that was the one that to me was the most fear-inducing. But let me see. There was something I came across yesterday that just blew my mind. And come to think of it, it's another good thing. And this I want to share with you. This is a memo that was sent on March 13th, so earlier this week, from the office of the District Attorney of Philadelphia to all of the people under him, the assistant DAs, and the prosecutors, the folks who prosecute. Philadelphia recently elected a new district attorney. And this guy is very different from the DAs they've had in the past. Would that someone like him run for office here, because he is a brave, brilliant progressive. And he ran on stopping the craziness that goes on with district attorneys, prosecution, jail sentences, abuse of parole, abuse of keeping people in jail because they simply can't afford bail. All of this stuff, the stuff that just fills our prisons. And he vowed to put in a whole new regimen with the idea of stopping the insanity. Because every time you put someone in prison or keep somebody there when there is no reason, no good reason to do it, you're ruining a life, okay? You're also costing the taxpayers a whole bunch of money that we do not have to be spending, that we could in fact spend on things like, education, schools, on stuff that is positive, not punitive. And this memo goes on and on and on. I read the whole thing, and I was like, I could not believe what this guy has done. He's upended. I'm sure there are assistant DAs, the lock 'em all up, law and order types, whose heads exploded when they got this memo. But anybody who understands the problem of mass incarceration in our country would have thrown a party when they saw it. And he flat out says at the top of this memo, he's putting in place new policies, telling his people what those policies are. And he starts off by saying, these policies are an effort to end mass incarceration and to bring balance back to sentencing. And he goes on to say, look, where extraordinary circumstances suggest that an exception to these new policies is appropriate, you must get approval from a supervisor. That means no assistant DA goes off half-cocked and decides, well, I don't care what the policy says, this I'm doing. Nothing. It goes up the chain of command. And he flat out starts out by saying, we are going to decline to charge people with certain things. Number one, do not charge possession of marijuana. If somebody's got pot, and it says regardless of weight, they got pot, we're not interested. Fascinating, given that the law in Pennsylvania hasn't caught up to that. Do not charge any of the offenses relating, this is such small print, relating to paraphernalia or buying from a person where the drug involved is marijuana. Here he goes after prostitution. Do not charge prostitution cases against sex workers where a person who has been arrested has 2 or fewer prostitution convictions. Withdraw all pending cases in these categories that would be declined under this policy. He's saying, get this crap out of the courts. Can we get this crap out of the courts and deal with the real criminals? He goes on to say, we got to charge lower gradations for certain offenses. So where you used to go charge somebody up here, charge them down here. Retail theft is one of the things he's going after. Shoplifting. He is saying, if somebody shoplifts a pack of cigarettes and somebody else shoplifts a $900 item, those are not the same kind of crime and should not be charged in the same manner. And what he's doing here is a lot of these crimes, think about it. Prostitution, shoplifting. These are crimes committed by who? Poor people. Poor people. And he's trying to stop what is a reality in this country, which is being poor often becomes a crime in our country. Our jails aren't overflowing with people of means. People of means like me, we smoke pot. I've smoked pot all my life. Have I ever been arrested? No. Ask some poor black kid. And we have the numbers that show that. And again, the DA in Philly says to his assistant DAs, all those prosecutors, and you must seek supervisory approval to charge retail theft cases at felony levels, even at misdemeanor levels. He says, remember, it's amazing how he's talking to the assistant DAs. I mean, he certainly knows them. Remember that a summary conviction permits a sentence of 90 days incarceration and fines up to $250. These penalties are sufficient to hold a shoplifter accountable. In other words, he's saying we do not have to throw the book at people. And then he goes into this stuff, how he wants his DAs, he directs them to approach diversion with greater flexibility. In other words, you get somebody, but rather than, again, doing the worst to them, how about diverting them into a program, something so that for drug offenses, for DUI, and he specifically talks about DUI here, or people who have guns. Listen to some of the things he's saying, that keep these people as much as we can out of our jails. He said, an otherwise law-abiding responsible gun owner who is arrested because he doesn't have a permit to carry the firearm may apply for consideration for diversion. In other words, okay, hey, buddy, this is wrong. Don't do that again. We're going to send you to this program where you got to learn something, right? Same as he says, a law-abiding first DUI. Do the same. Do the same. A defendant charged with marijuana delivery or possession with the intent to deliver. Do the same. And he says, and this is not a comprehensive list. None of this, by the way, these things do not exist necessarily here in Pittsburgh. This, I don't think, exists probably pretty much anywhere. But the people who did this are the voters. The voters of Philadelphia put this guy in. And he was quite open about what his intentions were. He also says that, note, these policies do not apply to homicides, violent crimes, sexual assault crimes, felon in possession of a weapon, economic crimes with a loss of $50,000 or more, or cases involving attacks on the integrity of the judicial process, perjury, obstruction of justice, witness intimidation. All of these cases were blah, 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 blah. So he's saying, understand, I am targeting the stuff that fills our prisons with people who needn't be there. And then he goes into sentencing and what he wants them to start asking of the court. You know, we're used, even you see it in television crime dramas, how the DAs, the prosecutors, they always ask the judge for the most onerous sentence, right? And he's saying, will you stop and think? And let me just read to you the DA's affiliate's memo to his people. The United States has the highest rate of incarceration in the world. It has increased 500% over just a few decades. Pennsylvania and Philadelphia have been incarcerating at an even higher rate than comparable states and cities for decades. So here, it's been a 700% increase in a few decades. And Philadelphia has been the most incarcerated of the 10 largest cities. Yet, D.A. Kenney says, yet Pennsylvania and Philadelphia are not safer as a result. Pennsylvania and Philadelphia are wasting resources in corrections rather than investing in other measures that actually reduce crime. Pennsylvania's and Philadelphia's treatment of addiction. Wait a minute. Overcarceration. Their overcarceration have bankrupted investment in policing. He's saying all the money we're throwing into the jails is keeping us from throwing that money into, for instance, policing, which would perhaps prevent more crime. It's keeping us from investing in public education, in medical treatment of addiction rather than punitive treatment. It's keeping us from putting in really good job training programs and economic development, all of which prevent crime more effectively than money invested in jails. Over-incarceration, says the Philadelphia District Attorney, also tears the fabric of defendants' familial and work relationships, both of which tend to rehabilitate defendants who are open to rehabilitation. What he's outlining here, we are doing everything wrong. Everything wrong. As a result, he says, a return to lower rates of incarceration for those defendants who do not require lengthy sentences is necessary in order to shift resources to crime prevention. Ultimately, the highest goal of sentencing must be to seek justice for society as a whole, while effectively preventing crimes in the future. At sentencing, assistant district attorneys must state, listen to this, must state on the record their reasoning for requesting a particular sentence. He's saying you can't just say, throw the book at him, Your Honor. Explain. And those reasons must state the unique benefits and costs of the sentence. For example, safety benefits, the impact on victims, the interruption of defendants' connections to their family, to employment for needed public benefits, and the actual financial cost of throwing the book at somebody. In each case, says the Philly DA to his underlings, place the financial cost of incarceration on the record. This is policy now. As part of your explanation of the sentencing recommended. And in talking about the financial cost to the taxpayers, use the following arguably low costs of incarceration. It costs, and this is on the low end, $42,000 per year to incarcerate one person. The actual cost, the DA says, arguably is closer to $60,000 a year to incarcerate one person. And he's throwing in the cost of overtime for correctional employees, health care for the incarcerated people. And we know, because we've thrown the book at so many people, we have a geriatric population now in our jails and prisons. And we know that as you get older, caring for those people becomes more and more expensive. And he says, as of March 1st of this month, Philadelphia County incarcerates approximately 6,000 people at a total annual cost of around $360 million per year. The cost of 1 year of unnecessary incarceration for one person is enough money to pay the salary of a beginning teacher, a beginning police officer, a social worker, even one of you, he says to his assistant DAs, is enough to pay for an addiction counselor. Wow. This is just at the beginning. I cannot tell you how extraordinary this memo is. And then I can't believe this guy. I love him. I want him. Okay. He says, for instance, if you are seeking a sentence of 3 years incarceration, state on the record, he tells his prosecutors, that the cost of the taxpayer will be minimally $126,000, if not more. And then you have to explain why you believe asking the taxpayers to pay that money is justified. In a very serious matter where you're asking for 26 years incarceration, you must state on the record that that will cost to put that person in jail $1,060,000 minimal. That's just minimal. It's not the real cost, more like $2 million. And then you must explain why you believe it's worth it for the safety of the Commonwealth and the citizenry of Philadelphia to spend that money for 25 years or 26 years, when maybe 12 years might do it. And then he goes into their abuse of probation and technical violations of probation, which send people back. And it's just amazing. And the last thing on the memo, I don't know if I have it all. I think I do. The last thing in all caps is request that there be no violation of probation or parole due to a positive drug test for use of marijuana. Okay? Somebody served their time, they're out, they go to the probation officer, they've even secured employment, they have been good citizens, haven't done anything, but they pee and, oh my God, they smoke some pot. What happens to those people in the past, they are thrown right back into the system and start all over again. And you can see that this DA knows. That's nuts. So, that is the memo. New policies announced February 15th, 2018. And unbelievable. If that ain't good news, I don't know what is. And I would hope that District Attorney Zappala here in Allegheny County, where we are no different. Do you know that over half the people sitting in the jail there, overlooking the Allegheny, the Monongahela River, do you know 50% of those have not been convicted of anything? I sort of get sick to my stomach every time I drive by, and I drive by every morning, because I look in there and I think there are people sitting in there who have not been convicted of a crime. And if they had money, if they had the resources I have, they wouldn't be sitting in there. They can't make bail. They're sitting in there because they're poor. That's where we are as a country. It's Dickensian England. It's worse in some respects. Caller. Hello. Caller?
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Hi. Hey, that's because the whole damn thing's became a big business.
Yes.
Same way with the Pentagon. It's a big business. The more we spend on the defense, the more conflicts and wars. The more we spend on the police, the more police, more arrest. Privatize the prisons, put them in prison. It's just a big money maker is all it is anymore.
No,
it really's turned out to be that in both cases, I say.
No, you're absolutely right. It's like Dwight Eisenhower on his way out warning us about the military-industrial complex. And that was, obviously, that came true. We paid no attention. And that drives our foreign policy now. And you can bet that the prison industrial complex has driven in large part through their lobbyists, with legislatures and the Congress, our current stupid, beyond stupid, criminal injustice system. So you're absolutely right. And we've got to take them on because we're footing the bill. You're footing the bill. Would you rather have that money go to keep somebody who smoked pot in jail, or would you rather have it go to have another teacher?
Right.
It's
what I really call about is this press secretary. How dare she say this guy's a bad actor, this Andrew McCabe, who spent his life in the CIA or whatever he was in. He's got a pretty good career. The guy is probably stellar when it comes. And she's going to say he's a bad actor? No. Your president, the guy that you're talking for, is the bad actor. He's the criminal. And eventually I hope they get the rotten son of a bitchin' bastard anyway. I can't stand any of this. It's unbelievable. He's going to try to fire him, which I don't think he will, over the stupid made-up story they made up.
Well, I'll tell you.
Unbelievable.
I'll tell you what's particularly cruel, but these are cruel people, is that this guy is, 2 days or 3 days away from securing his pension. And he's intending to retire. Right. And the only reason for doing this to him is to deprive him of that financial security that he worked for. That is the only reason. He's leaving, okay, one way or the other. And if they were to fire him, it is their way of depriving him of that. And that's just cruel. But that's who these guys are. That's who these guys are. So I hear you.
There has to be justice in the end of all this with Trump. There has to be. If there ain't, it's going to be so disappointing.
Well,
this guy is no damn good.
No.
No damn good.
No, right.
But
thank you.
Okay. We'll see you. Have a nice weekend.
You too. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye. No, he's no damn good. That's true. And Mueller's now subpoenaing of the records of the Trump business empire suggests that maybe there's a little more possibility that we will see justice, because you can imagine maybe the cesspool that is the Trump business empire. You can imagine. Does this guy follow the rules? No. There must be so many violations of all kinds of laws and regulations, of outright thievery, lying, money laundering. Yeah, I can't even imagine. And you gotta wonder, and I can't believe he wouldn't. I can't believe that that Mueller also doesn't have his tax returns, which we wanted to see before we elected him, but did not. And a prosecutor can get his hands on those, I think, like that. So he's probably got those. And then if he gets all these other records, wow. There is some thought that even though there's been rumors that Don Jr. and his wife were going to divorce, the fact that she filed for divorce yesterday, I believe, also makes some people suspect that might be an effort to funnel things to her, or for her to pull away from and get out while the getting's good before he goes off to prison. Let's put more people like Donald Trump and his despicable sons and all his crooked cronies. Let's put them in our prisons and let out black kids who do what I do. Smoke pot. Mark writes about the president's new chief economic advisor. Larry Kudlow, married 3 times, former cocaine addict. Yeah, and a TV star, because that's really important. Trump completely identifies with those folks. Has been tapped by Trump to be as he should fit right in. You can bet Larry never spent jail time for his extracurricular activities. After all, he was at Bear Stearns. And he left Bear Stearns because he was snorting up hundreds of thousands of dollars a week. Stormy Daniels seems to have a better lawyer than all those lawyers surrounding Trump. Well, I'll tell you what else she has. She's got a better case. I mean, that's the truth, too. And her, I would think, can't miss interview on 60 Minutes is due a week from Sunday. So be there or be square. But Mark tells us that her attorney was on Morning Joe this morning talking about proof of physical threats made to her. Yeah. And, well, Mark, you said what I just said. You said it first, though, I admit, but I didn't see it. 60 Minutes, maybe, must-see TV. Oh, God. We got a caller? Hello, caller.
Hello, Lynn. This is Jeff from beautiful Greene County.
Hi. Hi, Jeff.
How you doing?
Fine.
Yeah. What is it with these conservatives and all these celebrities and everything? I mean, they're always accusing of liberals of being so starstruck and all this kind of stuff, and like conservatives seem to be wanting to like put these guys in office all the time and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. What you mean, Ronald Reagan? Bad actors in more ways than one. Ronald Reagan, who, as we look, I mean, was a much better bet, obviously, than I mean, they're even getting. I mean, Ronald Reagan, you can make a case for, especially in retrospect. But Donald Trump, I mean, who's next?
Yeah.
Kid Rock? Yeah, right. Oh dear God.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Duck Dynasty. There's your cabinet.
And they think that like liberals like hang on every word of all the liberal actors that are out there, and really I could like myself I could care less what like what's his name, I can't even think of a liberal actor that like to talk about as an example. That's how much I care about like their opinions.
Oh,
okay. On my own.
I got you. Sean Penn or somebody, whatever. Susan Sarandon.
You were talking yesterday about Toys R Us, and I was reading a thing that it's not necessarily that Amazon hurt them as much as they hurt themselves some. That they were pretty saddled in debt, and plus they were owned by a venture capital company that also saddled them in debt. So that,
I'm sure.
That hurt them.
Yeah, I'm sure it's more.
I think it was like Bain Capital that was involved with them.
Oh, really? Bain Capital, Romney's old stomping grounds.
Yep.
Yep. Also,
and I also was reading. iHeartRadio is declaring bankruptcy.
Who is?
So that was a shocker.
Who is?
And
wait. What'd you say? Who's?
And another one that kind of hits close to home for Pittsburghers, Necco. The candy company.
Yeah.
Out of Massachusetts, they make sweet tarts and candy buttons and those little hearts that like have little things on them and everything. And Clark Bars is saying that if they can't buy find a buyer for their plant by May 6th, they're going to have to close.
Okay, there you
and
go.
Let all 400 of the workers go. So,
okay.
So much for, is this all winning and everything, with all these companies closing?
Yeah, really. My head's spinning with all the winning. Yeah. Well, okay, thanks for that bad news that I must have missed.
But, I'm a little upset about Necco because, park bars were like that.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, I love them. Okay, I can do without those stupid little hearts at Valentine's Day with, be mine printed on them. Yeah, but Clark bars? Jeez. Come on, guys, go out there and buy some Clark bars. And, hey, thank you.
Yeah, maybe somebody else will buy the rights to them and save the Clark bar.
Yeah,
so.
There you go. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Now.
Okay.
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So the Washington Post had an interesting piece today about, what we can expect to see in terms of the White House people departing. And McMaster's, for instance, is apparently going to be out, but they don't want the White House. They say is concerned that they don't want to humiliate him, knowing full well. So apparently they did want to humiliate Rex Tillerson. So those things become like it's beyond belief. Don't want to. Here's what the president wants McMaster's gone. Listen to this. He thinks McMaster is too rigid and that his briefings go on too long and seem irrelevant. Excuse me. This is the guy who has to sit with the president, who won't read his daily briefing. This is the guy who has to verbally, Mr. President, you should know, blah, 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 blah. And the president thinks, I don't want to know it. And can you do that in 30 seconds? It's too long. So you got to get out of here. He's thinking of maybe replacing him with a guy named Keith Kellogg, also John Bolton, who is like one of the most terrifying humans still walking the earth. I know someone who knows him and has worked with him. And he is, I just want to say, he is a scary character. Scary character. Keith Kellogg, another possibility. He's now chief of staff of the National Security Council. And it says here that Trump really likes him and that he has Kellogg travel with him a lot when he's on domestic trips because, quote, the president likes his company and thinks he's fun. This is how this president chooses who's going to be the number one guy in terms of national security at the White House. And the other loathsome being who may take McMaster's job, as I said, is Bolton. And the Washington Post reports thusly, Trump also thinks Bolton, who regularly praises the president on Fox News, is good on television. So these are the criteria for being in some of the most consequential positions in our country right now. Safeguarding the nation, the national security, and positioning ourselves in this roiling world of ours. The criteria seem to be the president should think you're fun and good on television, and he must like your company. What else? Other people on shaky ground, Ben Carson with his $31,000 dining room set. Scott Pruitt, who apparently has been really jockeying to be the Secretary of State, was jockeying a lot, and they didn't like that. And, Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, who just spent $139,000 to renovate his office doors. Geez, that makes Ben Carson's $31,000 dining room table look like nothing. $139,000 to renovate his office doors. And speaking of Zinke, have you heard this disgusting story? He was before I think a House committee yesterday, and he was being questioned by a congresswoman from Hawaii. And she was asking him about some provision in that is under the Interior Department that preserves the history of the Japanese-American internment during World War II. And Representative Colleen Hanabusa, who is a fourth-generation American. That beats me. I'm third generation. Fourth-generation American of Japanese ancestry. She asked Zinke, are you committed to continuing these programs, blah, 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 blah. And his response, the minute she stopped her question, was, konnichiwa. Konnichiwa. That is a greeting in Japanese. Can you imagine? And I suppose if the congressperson who questioned him was a Native American, he would have, before answering the question, say, how? Konnichiwa. And he even got it wrong, because I guess you say konnichiwa in the afternoon. There's a different greeting for the morning. And the congresswoman, was stunned, obviously. Said, I think it's still Ohayo gozaimasu. And I don't know what I can't. That's a whole different Japanese thing. She's an American. She's not Japanese. This is racism. This is a guy who looks at this American and sees a Japanese because she's not white. This is the guy who spent, what, $129,000 or $139,000 on his doors. Also, where did I read that the VA secretary now, there's such dissension in his department that he has had to now pay for an armed guard to stand outside his office. This is the Trump administration. No problems here. And I just want to leave you with one thing. A guy who's writing I really like, Charles Pierce, writes for Esquire, quoted part of a speech that was given by the president 50 years ago. That would be Lyndon Baines Johnson. And this was a speech given to the Congress, the joint session, after the horror of Selma. After the brutal attack on people, Americans marching peacefully by police in Selma, Alabama. This is the attack in which now Congressman John Lewis, as a young man, was almost killed. And this was just days after the Selma attack. And President Johnson went in front of the probably almost 99.9% all white male Congress and said this in his southern accent. There is no Negro problem. There is no southern problem. There is no northern problem. There is only an American problem. And we are met here tonight as Americans, not as Democrats or Republicans. We are met here as Americans to solve that American problem. This was the first nation in the history of the world to be founded with a purpose. The great phrases of that purpose still sound in every American heart, north and south. All men are created equal. Government by the consent of the governed. Give me liberty or give me death. Those are not just clever words. Those are not just empty theories. In their name, Americans have fought and died for 2 centuries, and tonight around the world, they stand there as guardians of our liberty. Those words are a promise to every citizen that he shall share in the dignity of man. This dignity cannot be found in a man's possessions. It cannot be found in his power or in his position. It really rests on his right to be treated as a man, equal in opportunity to all others. It says that he shall share in freedom. He shall choose his leaders, educate his children, and provide for his family according to his ability and his merits as a human being. To apply any other test, to deny a man his hopes because of his color or race, his religion or place of birth, is not only to do injustice, it is to deny America and to dishonor the dead who gave their lives for American freedom. And he goes on to say, I want you to pass this civil rights bill. From the window where I sit with the problems of our country, I recognize that outside this chamber is the outraged conscience of a nation, the grave concern of many nations, and the harsh judgment of history. But even if we pass this bill, the battle will not be over. What happened in Selma is part of a far larger movement which reaches into every section and state of America. It is the effort of American Negroes to secure for themselves the full blessings of American life. Their cause must be our cause too, because it is not just Negroes, but really it is all of us who must overcome this crippling legacy of bigotry and injustice. And we shall overcome. That's a president. 50 years ago. 50 years ago. All righty, guys. Thank you. It's been a great week. I've enjoyed it immensely. Hope you have too. And I'll see you back here on Monday. Have a great weekend.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.